Started. Again, my name is Veronica Parker with TAP, and today is the 3-year plan preview webinar with Neil Kelly of the AEP office as well as Greg Hill of West Ed. Earlier this morning, everyone was sent the PowerPoint presentation via email if you were registered to attend this webinar. If you did not receive the PowerPoint presentation or didn't have a chance to download it, it is available for you via the resource pod. So you will select on the file, which is titled AEP 3-Year Plan Preview and today's date. Select the file, select download, and the file will be downloaded to whatever browser your computer uses to download files. So please be sure to use that as a guide to take notes and to keep as we move along with the 3-year plan process. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please be sure to post them in the chat pod. Either Neil or Greg will address your questions. If they do not get to them immediately, please be patient and they will address your earliest convenience. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on the California Adult Education website. I'll be sure to post the URL of where the webinar recording as well as the PowerPoint will be posted. So if you have to leave for any reason or you would like to share today's information with colleagues, please be sure to check out the California Adult Education website for that information. And I am not seeing any technical difficulties, so we'll go ahead and get started with Neil. Neil, are you ready?
Okay, yeah, we're packed today with 24 participants. It's funny, so last week we had a NOVA webinar. I think we had like 180 people sign up. So either everybody's done with their 3-year plan or they're so worried about their fiscal stuff they can't even focus on planning, which is interesting. But I'm glad you guys are here because I know most of the people on the call today. And so we can have a nice chat about the guidance and what that means to you and what's happening and kind of go through the steps. Joining me today is Greg Hill. If you don't remember Greg, he was with us a long time ago back in the AB 86 days and at the beginning of AB 104 with implementation. So Greg's been around. He just hasn't been on the webinar, so we welcome Greg back to the studio, so to speak. And let's get started. So I'm just going to do a quick overview and purpose, and then Greg's going to walk you through a review of the guidance, the resource tools or resources and tools, and then I'll come back and do the feedback that we got from the field and next steps. So it's not too many slides, and while Greg is walking you through the guidance, I'll try to handle any questions in the chat. If it's something a little too technical for me, we'll wait till Greg's done, or we'll wait till the slides are over, and then we'll go back and hit those more technical questions. But we have plenty of time today, so feel free to ask all kinds of questions. Okay, so purpose. As you know, the AB 104 legislation under Education Code 84906 lays out the planning requirements. And we did a little trailer bill editing this year, so the planning requirements went under the 3-year plan rather than the annual plan. And so the way it works now is there's a 3-year plan with all the requirements, and then the annual plan is an update of that and more of a tactical plan of what you're going to focus on for the year. And then in NOVA, we have the member work plans that focus on those strategies and the budgets that support that. So it's kind of a connection there, logical trail, and hopefully that will make it easier for everyone to participate in the planning and budgeting process. Nothing really new. It's still the same requirements that were part of the last 3-year planning effort. So no surprises. We haven't changed anything. We are providing more data tools and technical assistance, and Greg will cover some of that today. You'll be seeing through the newsletter and on the Cal Adult Ed website a lot of webinars, workshops. If you haven't already, we're doing human-centered design, we're doing data training, next month. So we'll be doing some other webinars in the next 3 or 4 months just to help provide additional information. So, and then really the only change, like I said, there was trailer bill language that kind of aligned things and gave us an extra year because we're really, last year was the 3rd year of the 3-year plan, so we extended that 1 year. It really was a 4-year plan, and we're kind of getting back to kind of a 3-year planning cycle, so they give you a little extra time to do this next 3-year plan, and then we'll be back under a 3-year planning cycle. We'll use Nova to upload the plans, and then your members will certify in Nova, kind of like they do now for the annual plan or the budget submission, those kind of things. So that makes it easier. You don't have to run around signatures and stuff like that. And by uploading it to Nova, it allows you to customize your report. You want to put charts, pictures, because I know most of you will be doing this in a public setting and taking this to the local board. So this gives you flexibility rather than typing it into a system like Nova. You can customize it the way you need to and then upload it when you're ready for certification. So with that, let's see if there's any changes because we're going to get into Greg's part. And so not seeing anybody typing, let's bring Greg Hill Jr. onto the webinar.
Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Hill Jr. I'm with WestEd for all those who may not know me. I do see a fair number of familiar faces, quote unquote, and it's really exciting to see all of you. In some ways, in fact, I'd venture to say that this preview, while it will benefit you, everyone I'm seeing here tend to be the advanced, the folks who actually seek out information before it becomes public, which is to say that you're probably the audience I'm least worried about. But at any rate, but we're really glad you're on. And so, okay, let's get going. So one of the things that we wanted to do this year was, for the 3-year cycle was, obviously adhere to the legislative requirements, but see if we couldn't sort of, infuse the process with a little bit more human-centered focus, a sort of human-centered design focus, and see if we couldn't, instead of just focusing on, say, compliance with the legislation, see if we couldn't actually create conditions for consortia to not only respond to the basic requirements, but in fact come together and develop robust plans that they can use themselves to truly drive the work in the region. Because when push comes to shove, these plans are your plans, and we want them to be alive and active, and we want all of you to be engaged in pursuing the goals that you articulate in them. And so the structure, the approach is all really intended to help promote that kind of planning process. Here we go. So the 3-year, did I skip one? No, I didn't. Okay, good. All right, the 3-year plan approach. What we tried to do was organize the requirements, the response requirements, into 4 basic buckets, which reflect 4 phases that we believe to be essential to good planning. So the first is pre-planning assessment. So, and I'm going to go over each one of these individually. So don't worry if you catch everything right now. But first is pre-planning assessment, where you assess what you've done, your capacity to deliver services, identify resources, etc. Community needs and customers. This is more, some of you will have attended, for example, I think AIR's webinar a few months back on community asset mapping. that would be a part of this. So it's really trying to understand who your community is, who participates, who benefits from services. Third, identifying goals and strategies. And so this is where you'd articulate, your primary vision, sets of, goals, strategies, etc. And then the last section, you really zero in on what you intend to pilot and what you from a human-centered design perspective. So we're thinking here about strategies that you want to rapid prototype, perhaps. Basically, the stuff you're going to do almost immediately next, right? Once your plan is approved. All right, and so let's go into discuss each of these. Okay, so these are pretty dense slides, and so feel free to sort of focus in on them or click around as we're talking. I'm not going to try to read all of them, but for each section in the planning guidance document, which we're going to release fairly soon, there are general expectations, which I've listed here as goals, right? What you must achieve in this section. We also provide some guiding questions, which are really just meant to help you, in terms of your planning process. We also, in addition, provide resources, lists of resources, and both in terms of things you can click on and find, and you can incorporate into your planning, but also webinars and things like that. And some of that is still being planned, but I've saved all of those to the end, and then we'll go through those quickly once we get through the basic requirements. So okay, so pre-planning. So you're going to be required to do three things, right? One, identify/evaluate consortium and member capacity, including current levels and types of education workforce programs. All of you who were engaged in AB 86 will remember this, right? Current levels and types of services. What we're looking for is for you to really take a hard look at your consortium region and identify who's providing services and at what level. Sometimes this gets confusing for folks because the universe of who's to be included, it sometimes varies. We're really looking here for the entire region. So it's not just, for example, who is providing it isn't just, for example, who, like your members, your current members. It's really like everybody who's providing these services, irrespective of whether they're actively participating in your consortium or not. And in fact, that's really what that second piece, identifying key partners, is about. Likewise, we're looking to you to collect information on funding. So how much funding is going to these services? Where is it coming from? Etc. We're going to provide some tables, some templates to help you with this. And while you are going to be able to submit a PDF of your plan, we are providing a template for folks to use if that's preferable. But in addition to that, there will be a few required templates, and so just wanted to make mention of that. A couple of those are going to be related to this. Let's see here. And then lastly, right, the goal would be to identify alignment of adult education services provided by the consortia with other regional plans. So it's, basically at a really high level, who's providing services, what kinds of services are they provided, what funding is going toward those services, and to what extent are we actually coordinating our efforts, not just with each other, but also with other aligned strategies, right? Like WIOA, Carl Perkins, Strong Workforce, etc. And yes, Neil pointed out some of this funding can be found in NOVA. Absolutely, this shouldn't be terribly difficult. But anyway, it's part of the exercise here is not just to hey, go and get it and give it back to us, because we don't really need that. It's really meant to promote conversations like, okay, let's take a look at what we've done, say, for the last 3 years, and how has the funding been spent? Have we spent it effectively, et cetera? But anyway, and these guiding questions kind of echo that. Okay, does that make sense for folks? Anybody have any questions about this section? Marianne is typing, so I'm going to just give her a second. There we go. This data is for members only or all of the partners in the consortium? That is the question. It really should be everybody in the region. The legislation has made it much more likely that you are in some way or another engaged with everyone who's providing services. But it's really, this is really an opportunity for you to consider the larger scope, right? So it's inclusive of the consortium and consortium members and partners, but also other folks, right? Other like libraries that may have literacy programs or other community-based programs. So levels, number served, okay. So what that means is levels and types, and people get really hung up on this, is really, it's basically, if we take a look at program areas, adult ed, right, levels and types generally applies most directly to levels of ESL, levels of ABE and ASC. So is an agency, only providing services in, basic literacy versus, agencies who are providing services that are high school level and or lead to a diploma. For CTE programs that might be, are some programs just pre-apprenticeship? Are they introductory? Are they like full-blown pathways that lead all the way to, industry certification and state-recognized apprenticeships, right? So it's really just, again, mapping, right? Who is doing what, and how can we better coordinate, our resources and services? Don't let that trip you up. It's really not meant to be a bean counting exercise. It's just really just trying to open up, the purview to include those other agencies. And that's exactly right. So Marianne, you have some of this info in your WIO MOU. You need to translate. Yes, absolutely. That's exactly right. Yes, that's a great source. Between the lines here, it would be lovely to have a singular application, but we're not there yet. But yes, Marianne, you're 100% on the right track. Okay, so moving on to the next slide, community needs and customers. So this is where, again, it's really influenced by human-centered design perspective. So what we want to try to do for three things: describe the regional needs for adult education and workforce services as it pertains to your current customers, regional community, labor market. Define your shared and unique customers, and evaluate your alignment, your current alignment with regard to your levels and types of services to actually meet that need. So if the first phase is, okay, who's doing it? What have we done so far? Who's providing services? What resources are available? This is where you drill down into, okay, what do we really need in this region? Are we providing way too much, of one program when, demographic needs suggest that we just simply don't need it? One of the things that I see a lot, and I work with a lot of consortia, or at least I talk with them a lot, is programs that seem to persist because people enroll in them, but not necessarily because there's actually a regional demographic need for folks in that field. And what can sometimes happen, right, is an oversaturation. And so this is where you really want to look, okay, do we need, phlebotomy? Do we need this? Do we need that? And I think too, and this is where the unique and shared customers piece comes into play. It really, is intended for you to try to understand what the regional profile looks like in terms of your students. So I would even venture to say that if any of you have done that kind of work with regard to sort of identifying creating student profile, this would be an opportunity to do so. To really kind of talk with them, try to understand what their needs are from their perspective, etc., what their priorities are, so on and so forth. And yeah, Marianne's right. If you're required to conduct environmental scans for RIOA, that's precisely the kind of thing you should be pulling from. That's right. Also, and then finally, yeah, you want to evaluate the alignment between the needs you've identified and levels and types of services that you're providing within the region. And so, think of it, it's a simple equation, right? We identify need as this. We think we're meeting this much need. And that either leaves a surplus or a deficit, right? And so your plans, your 3-year plans should follow directly from this section, really. Oh, I love that. Copy and steal everything. That's right. No reason to reinvent the wheel. Okay. Let's see here. Section 3, identifying goals and strategies. So this is really the meat of your 3-year plan. It should follow logically, naturally from the previous 2 sections, right? I would almost say at this point, when you get to this point, what your strategies in some form or another should be. I don't want to say the strategies themselves, but at least what you intend to address should be fairly predictable. Let's see here. So for this section, you'll need to identify the activities and goals that you intend to pursue over the next 3 years to meet community needs and improve outcomes. You'll describe the strategy to improve integration of services, which is, in AB86 language, right? This was what is it? Transitions and integration, right? I think that applies here. Describe strategies to improve transitions into post-secondary. Yep, there it is. And then finally, describe strategies. Actually, that should not necessarily be here. That should be in the next one. So don't get confused by that one. This is your high-level plan, right? Where you will, as thoroughly and as concretely as possible, really try to articulate your vision over the next few years and all of the sort of stages you're going to follow to get there. To help with that, I guess it's 2 required templates right now that we're going to ask all of you to fill out. One is a logic model template. If you don't know what a logic model is, you will very soon. It is a kind of visual way to, show, all of the required inputs, activities, outputs, and resultant outcomes related to a set of strategies or a singular strategy. It just depends on how you use it. Aligned to what we often call a theory of action, which is to say, the change, an articulated statement of the change you wish to see. And then related to that, we're asking for, I think, 5 outcomes that you will use internally to track your progress throughout the next 3 years. Your progress toward those goals, and these should all be aligned. Okay, Ryan, if there will be a word character, can we get those clearly stated early on so we don't overwrite sections? I am, it's interesting you should mention that. Right now there is a page limit, I think a recommended page limit of around 35 pages, or not recommended, sorry, let me put this differently, a page limit of, I think 25 or 35, I don't recall. But we have gotten a lot of feedback suggesting that word count might be preferable, and I think we can certainly accommodate that. If there are thoughts that folks would like to share in terms of what that limit ought to be, that would be great. Because yes, like you, people can write. There's some folks who really just can write and write and write, and at some level, if a 100-page plan is prohibitive, right, for anybody who might wish to read and understand what you're trying to do. But then 5 pages is obviously not significant or thorough enough, right? So anyway, so we're certainly open to suggestions there. And also, as part of this, there isn't an active requirement to conduct an evaluation or anything like that, but we are really trying to prompt folks to really consider their own accountability to each other and to the populations that you serve. And so, as you're working through identifying your goals and strategies, we really like you to come together and put some hard thinking into it, and make the kind of commitments to each other, and ensure that you put forth resources to support it, following the plan. Over the next 3 years. Anyway, let's see here. Again, piloting and implementation. So this piece here, describing approaches to prototype new strategies, that really should be in here. Piloting and implementation. So sorry about that. Here is where we're going to drill down, and you will explain how you prototype and pilot new strategy to address the region's most urgent problems, and describe how you intend to evaluate the effectiveness of these pilots using formative data collected throughout to inform continuous improvement, as well as summative data to assess the overarching impact of these strategies. What we found over the last few years is that oftentimes plans like these, the 3-year plans, if they're designed well, really can and really do effectively drive some of the work that you do over the period, your planning period. But sometimes they're at a really, really high level, and don't often, and there isn't an opportunity to capture some of the smaller scale activities that, in fact, you really commit all sorts of resources to. And by resources here, I mean time and attention, work and funding. All of you, on some level, are already doing this kind of thing. Anyone who, for example, opened up, decided to try a Spanish language ESL program, right? Or a Spanish language, HSD program, right? And then waited to see how many people enrolled, and then based on that, adjusted strategies based on enrollment. Say maybe placed it elsewhere. Maybe changed up how it is that you provide instruction for certain programs because you got feedback from students suggesting that they would be better served if you only provided it in the afternoons or something, right? And so you are always, almost all the time, right, engaged in this kind of activity. What we'd like you to do is communicate that here. For those strategies that you really want to collectively invest in, and simply put, want to wrap a prototype. We're not looking, no one's looking to hold you, quote unquote, accountable for success of pilots. I mean, the whole point of a prototype is to sort of learn from it and then adapt. And so we're hoping that this might actually kind of change how it is agencies kind of look at accountability a little bit, where instead of sometimes looking to just sort of, hey, did you do this thing, slapping hands, this is really like, okay, we're going to try this thing and we're all going to try it, and because of it, we're not going to, if it fails, and that's okay. Right? Anyway, okay. So some guiding questions: what problems need most solving? What does it even mean for a strategy to work? what criteria were you going to use to assess success or failure? Have you, put forth sufficient resources to measure the impact and evaluate success, etc. And thank you, Veronica. I see some back and forth on the language. So it says, draft guidance. Yes, that's right. No smaller than 10-point font, margins no less than 1 inch, and not to exceed 35 pages, single spaced. There we go. Front matter and back matter excluded. Front matter are, it's like your cover page.
Hey, Greg, there's one question that Eileen had, and she said several of the members,
all right,
I would say of her members, are very concerned about how to list many of the extra things that do not necessarily fit into a particular category.
Are there any
maybe
questions?
She's talking about types and levels of services or something like that. What do you do? I mean, any options for when you have things that don't fit into the templates or table?
Well, I guess it depends on what categories we're talking about, right? I mean, I know sometimes there's folks have difficulty sussing out, well, what is, like, for example, student services, like what do you, student support services, what do you call that, and I know for like data purposes that can be kind of confusing. We're not really requiring, I mean, right now we know that which programs are allowable. And there's more than enough guidance out there with regard to, how you can spend your funding on student support services and so forth. So, your plan really should be your plan, and it will communicate priorities. So yes, maintenance levels. Okay, I see. Maintenance types and levels of services, security guards, maintenance. So I think for your regional scan, you're really focusing on students.
Yeah.
Right.
So Greg, on that one,
what you want to
the
see
exercise we're going to have everybody do later this year,
and you should use the allowable program areas to help drive that.
Is they're going to the legislature is requiring us to report
for
how much it costs to run
maintenance
program areas.
I mean,
so we
I'm not
will
sure I quite
ask
get
for
that
things like
for maybe
security
funding,
guards, maintenance, space, custodial, you name it. Your operating costs, along with paying teachers and supplies and health benefits. How much does it really cost? And then, of which fund source are you using to pay for that? Are you charging fees? Are you getting, a referral, an ITA from the one-stop? Are you using your WIOA 2 funds? So those are the kind of questions they want to know. And we'll be putting that into NOVA. And so that could be a good resource to use for the 3-year plan. Now, you might have some, like Greg was saying, you might have some partners that might not be willing to give you that information, but at least I think most of that information will be entered into NOVA during that exercise. And that'll be launched probably in November with a deadline of February or March. So it gives you enough time to use that information in the tables that Greg's talking about.
Oh, yeah, I think that's right. And so, for your, current, for your current membership, I mean, it does sound like, the state's already going to have a process to help you collect that information. The kind of tables, that will be required for the annual plan aren't going to be that granular. It's really just kind of, it's more of an environmental scan. So, just to harken back even to AB 86, one of the driving forces, behind some of the requirements.
And Greg, there was one other question from Brian.
With, frankly,
he really brought up a good point. He said, "Who's the audience?" And I had said it's your region, your stakeholders, your students.
And that's still a kind of
the state will look at it. People in Sacramento will look at it, but it's really a plan for them
to at that level.
Use locally, right?
But anyway, I hope that helps. Yeah. Other questions? Mm-hmm. I think that's a great question, and the question of who your audience is. Obviously, the document is going to have several audiences, to be sure. The rule of thumb that I've always had, right, was write it to the person with to the audience person or persons with the greatest influence. Or in greatest investment. And I think that, it's going to probably vary somewhat, but I would anticipate that it's a public document. I think that, and this is a little bit off the cuff, I think that if it's funded by public funds, which it is, it should be readable by people who are non-experts. At the same time, it should clearly communicate your intent.
No, that's great, Greg. I mean, so what will be coming out? I mean, Veronica has put some links in the chat, and we're actually building kind of a planning resource page. I know it's difficult sometimes to find a lot of these resources on the website.
I don't know if I'm really answering
so much information there.
Way I think
so what we're going to do is build a resource page for planning, and they'll list things like, I know LA County just had a countywide plan that they came out with. Orange County did the same thing. I think the Central Valley did something like that a long time ago. So there are regional planning efforts that that have been done looking at all programs, communities, and things like that maybe you can reference or look at, and those are public documents as well as all the data resources that will be available through the training that's rolling out next month. There should be a workshop that Randy Tillery will be doing in your area sometime next month that was posted on the in the newsletter. Is on the website. So all kinds of resources and tools and information that are coming out. Greg, anything to add on that?
I'm really glad you mentioned that. So that actually brings us to this last slide. So as I mentioned, in the guidance we have, under each of the four, main sections, we have those guiding questions, those requirements, and then also resources and planning tools, which are right now, some of them are just planned, some exist, so we're still working on those. But to echo what Neil is saying, I mean, we are, and by we, I mean a pretty broad team of folks are working feverishly to assemble and develop tools and resources to help you plan. I think, and here are just a few, right? We've got trainings, workshops, and webinars planned. Human-centered design training has been available. I would encourage all of you to participate in it. It's really eye-opening. It's exciting. And if you're lucky, you get me as a coach. So I would look into it. Career pathway training, adult education data unlocked. This is the Randy's presentation. There are all kinds of webinars on the TAP site, some of which I didn't even know existed and only found them while scanning the web for good resources that we could provide to help with your planning. And then, of course, we'll have webinars and workshops on developing a logic model. I'm going to see if I can twist AAR's arm into doing their community asset mapping, webinar slash workshop again, and et cetera. Tools, all sorts of tools out there already. So, we're working on right now. I think all of you have seen those, fact sheets from a few years back, last year and the year before. We're debating on doing the fact sheets, but we are providing a whole bunch of index of need data. And so right now, in fact, actually, anybody who would be interested in taking a preliminary look at that and then providing me some feedback, I'd really like that. Go ahead and say so in the chat, and I'll send you what we're playing around with sending. Just several tables at the consortium level that really break out some important, some key demographic information related to the populations within each region. Information that it would be difficult to parse out on your own. We're also using that to develop some interactive resources that will, we're going to put this stuff at the Tableau. We're going to, have a map, highlighting, that's basically self-serve data that will draw from a number of different resource locations. Thank you, Peggy. Let's see. In addition, I'm not sure. I'm hoping all of you are familiar with the Centers of Excellence LMI data. It is outstanding. There are, gobs of reports that. I don't want to say it's an untapped resource. I feel like people who really know it well. Yeah, every time I feel like I'm imagining what I would like to provide to the field with regard to economic and labor data, they already did it. So we're trying to sort of consolidate some of those links. And I do see you, Kathy, Lali, and Eileen. Thank you. Also, Launchboard is now, coming online with its Adult Ed tab. If you haven't requested, thank you, Jody. If you haven't requested access to it, you really should. If for some reason you're not getting responses, please let us know through TAP, and we can, see if we can't circle around to find out why. In order to get access to it, you have to be a CalPADS member, which most likely all of you are, as CalPADS is the primary mechanism whereby K-12 agencies agency data is collected and submitted. Let's see what else. Obviously you've got your CASAS quarterly and annual reports. I'm not sure how we want to deal with this. We're kind of still thinking through it, but I imagine that some of you have poked around in TE, but I'm thinking that you probably haven't poked around enough. It really does have some robust capabilities with regard to providing more detailed, more nuanced reports that could really help with planning. And so maybe actually, Neil, as I'm thinking about it, maybe that's something we can circle around with CASAS on to see if we couldn't even just provide some kind of, hey, here are some reports, here's how you can run some reports that drill down into some really neat or really interesting data. And then lastly, and again, just a sample, we've been working on a consortium member effectiveness / self-assessment tool, which came out of the consortium and member effectiveness field team. And it's really just a simple, survey tool that you can use to kind of measure, well, your own effectiveness. It's, not a requirement. It's just meant to kind of help you gauge where you are in, relative to the consensus view of a good number of folks like yourself. Oh, beautiful. Thank you, Veronica. That's outstanding. And then, of course, we've got, guidance documents and templates that we're going to provide. So for your plan template, which we'll provide, you don't necessarily have to use, but we'll provide it. Some of you are going to want to do that, and that's fine. Yeah. Also, we'll have the tables, and in addition, we're working on a mechanism to provide planning support through the TAP, where, say, if you're struggling with how to convene the right people, or figure out the right questions to ask, or just generally don't know how to begin with this 3-year plan thing, TAP has experts, some of whom are actually retired adult ed principals and luminaries who can be potentially available to help. And so I think that's about it. Oh yeah, the last piece is, so we did, we did actually solicit feedback from a number of consortium leads. And so far we've got some pretty good feedback. Nobody has freaked out or anything, so that's really good. Some folks were even really generous and provided some information that we can add in terms of resources and so on and so forth. But anyway, so that's the quick rundown on the feedback. Let's see, what's the next slide? I think from there. Beautiful. All right. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back to Neil. Are there any questions for me before he picks up the baton?
Yeah, I think
No.
Neil is muted.
Thank you, Peggy.
Okay, Veronica, can you hear me now?
Neil,
Yes,
take it away.
Okay, great. All right, so
so we're going to have to work on our timing.
okay, so like Greg was saying, there's a lot of good tools. A lot of this stuff you're familiar with. Some of the things, I mean, just looking at who's not getting 12 hours of instruction or more, that could be simple as, people that are coming in 1 or 2 hours and leaving. I mean, finding out what's happening with those students. Finding out why your high school diploma or GED numbers are low, or why aren't people transitioning, or, it's nothing new. You have all this data. We're going to give you tools so you can do, more digging, but nothing has really changed in the last 3 years. We're just going to have more data available for you, and it's all the same stuff. So hopefully you're getting really good at this. And the comments that we got were great. Let me just quickly go back to that. Things like more clarity, additional resources, specific examples. And Ryan already talked about word count, program area specific, guidance on, or maybe governance and bylaws, and using NOVA and the logic model. So all this stuff we kind of covered today anyway. So next steps, and this is the cue to our last slide, which is next steps. So we're wrapping up a little early, so start thinking about questions that you can ask Greg or I, because this is the last slide. So what we'll do is, based on the feedback that I was just alluding to, we'll make edits. That'll go to the state. State leadership will review and approve the final version. Hopefully that'll be out next month. And then, as Greg went through the details, there'll be training, workshops, TA, webinars, consultation. That'll be happening over the next 8 months until the plans are due in June of next year. So we're working with the programmers to have NOVA available for a 3-year plan upload, and that should be available hopefully in the early spring. If you get your plan done early, the deadline will be in June. We don't have an exact deadline, but probably we'd want to wrap this thing up in early June as people take vacation or schools start closing, things like that. We will summarize and submit the 3-year plans to the legislature, because that's a requirement in the reporting requirement for the annual plan to the legislature, or the annual review. And all these plans, when you submit them, upload them to NOVA, they will be available for public viewing of anybody that accesses the website. So what we do is every day we do a download of stuff from NOVA onto the Cal Adult Ed website. So when you click on that map and you go to your consortia, all those documents are available for public viewing. So very transparent. And so if the public or local stakeholders want to look at it, it'll be available once you submit it and certify it. So I think that's it. Here's the website, caladulted.org, if you didn't know. And like I said, we'll have a resource page probably up sometime next month with all the planning resources. And then also TAP, as Veronica has put in the chat, is available to assist. I think Veronica listed the website, the telephone number, the address, those kind of things. So I think that's it. So any other questions that you might have on this? It's pretty simple. We're just going to be providing a lot more assistance and tools and things like that, but same requirements. You should start this effort soon because it does take a while, and some people have to go before their boards and have to get local stakeholder input, so the scheduling all does take a lot of time. So hopefully you've already started that process of scheduling and reviewing, and all these tools that Greg was referring to can help with that process. I think we only had about 15 to 20 consortia sign up for human-centered design. So there might be another cohort in the spring, but I don't know the timing with the 3-year plan. That might be difficult to try to squeeze that in there and draft your 3-year plan all by the June deadline. Nonetheless, Greg, any other comments as we wrap up?
Just a couple notes here. Jody's asking, do I still want feedback? Absolutely. Jody, please, feel free to, submit. I don't know how long we'll keep it open. I'd say probably, we can probably collect feedback using that form if you've received it just for the next few days. We don't want to get, too much because we just want to make sure we can update it and then we'll release another version. But yeah, that would be great. Oh, beautiful. What are the best guides to inform folks on adult? And what's the last document? The last document. I don't know that there really was one. And that is, Ryan, to your question, basically, Ryan, it looks like you're asking what are the best resources, where to go. And honestly, that's what we're trying to pull together right now. And so, with that, again, I would say if you're trying to understand, if you're looking for answers to a specific problem, please reach out, let us know, and perhaps that becomes one of the categories that we include in the toolkit as a whole. So. Right,
and like people were saying even earlier, they're already doing some of this stuff as a requirement in other programs, so you don't have to do everything brand new or reinvent something. You've probably already done a lot of this stuff or collected some of this information if you're funded by WIOA 2 or if you're doing guided pathways, if you're at a college, all kinds of other efforts. We're not asking you to do anything that would be outside of the normal planning process. And most everyone's doing regional planning now anyway, so this shouldn't be anything too difficult. It's just, getting stakeholder and member and partner input. That's the tough part, the scheduling and the discussion and agreeing. So, I don't know. Greg, last comments?
I think I'm good. I think you got it, yeah.
Okay, well, if you do have additional comments, like Greg said, Veronica, are we able to keep that feedback mechanism open for a few more days?
Yes, we can. And if you would like, I can email all of the participants who are on today the links to that guidance feedback form.
Okay, only if you have comments, not, I don't know, you don't want people to respond if they think everything's good. Right.
Yeah.
And watch for, so if you're coming up to Sacramento next week, we'll do some deep dives with the field teams on this. We'll do a deep dive on the Friday with the directors. So there'll be more information on that, more discussion, dialogue, breakout, peer-to-peer discussion. And so this is just kind of the overview, as it says, and there'll be more to follow. And so look for, release of tools, release of training. I would go back to the website or the newsletters and look at all the scheduled dates that we have in October for the data training, and that would be a good training to bring your team to. So if you have a planning team in your consortia, those are excellent venues to bring your team to. I don't know, Veronica, if you have a link to those trainings. I mean, there's like 12 of them next month, all up and down the state, in every part of the state. I don't know about remote corners, but they're going up to Redding and down south San Diego and all points in between. Oh, thank you. So that link there will show you all the different trainings we have scheduled, including the other ones that'll be webinar-based, but the trainings that I'm talking about, the data and accountability regional training, those are face-to-face. So like Red Bluff, Santa Maria, Los Angeles, San Bernardino, Walnut, which is Mount Sac, Sunnyvale, Visalia, Mather, which is Sacramento, Walnut Creek, Bay Area, San Diego, Anaheim. So a lot of locations. So it should be near you. I think there's even one on the Central Coast. For those, I didn't see that, but I think it's later. So I think, Greg, we'll probably come back next month once the final guidance is firm, and we've got some additional input and dialogue from the field teams and the directors. If there's any other things we can share, maybe something will come out of the data and accountability training, those kind of things. So, all right, Veronica, do you have? Are all the trainings the same? Is there a sequence? So, I don't know, Greg. Do you think all the trainings, all those trainings are the same? But I guess the sequence, Greg, would be, and that's a good question. I mean, personally, I think I would have done like human-centered design, and then maybe some asset mapping and data diving. Greg, do you have a suggested sequence that might be helpful for people to do as far as, connecting with the trainings and webinars?
I think that's a brilliant question. And, why don't we try to pull that together? I think that's a good idea. Right now, I think Neil is probably right in terms of just off the cuff, how you might want to do it. But yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think we should actually, and we do that a little bit in the guidance doc, but let me chew on that.
Okay, yeah.
Because, yeah, that could
Greg's going to put together the ingredients for making a good plan. He'll get the flour and the mixing bowls, and we'll kind of lay out the step-by-step process in putting together that plan. And it'll tie into the trainings that we're offering. So you can follow that sequence and not get, because we're going to have a lot of resources and training and webinars out there. So, like that is suggested, like Greg could put together kind of like, here's a little roadmap that you can follow, or a cookbook, that can help you navigate all the different ingredients that you need, and here they are, and here's where they're at, and here's how you can take advantage of it. Greg, how would you get that back out to everyone, or could we just put that in the newsletter or something like that?
Yeah, I think we would make it a resource. Yeah, I do.
Okay, that would be great. Will that work for everyone? All right. So 1 o'clock, still got a half an hour, but I think we had a breakthrough there on that suggestion, and we don't want to give Greg too much to do. Um, okay, Veronica, do you want to close it out? And before Veronica closes it out, I want to thank Greg. Greg has been working behind the scenes, still involved in adult ed. He used to come on the webinars with me on a regular basis, and he got busy with other work, but we're bringing him back because he's so knowledgeable about, he's probably between myself and Greg, we're the longest tenured state level kind of adult ed people that are involved in this project. So it's good to have Greg on the webinar today. So thank you, Greg, and thank you, Veronica, for handling the chat and the other, troubleshooting that goes on, and Melinda as well, that nobody saw but was behind the scenes as well. So take it away, Veronica, and thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Neil and Greg, and thank you all for participating. I did post the registration link for all of our upcoming webinars and in-person trainings. Next week, we will be hosting a webinar titled Yes They Can, Rigorous Writing Tasks for Low-Level ESL Students, so please be sure to check that out. That is a part of the AEP tab webinar mini-series on program areas. I'm about to close the webinar, and when I do, please be sure to fill out the evaluation. This information will be used in the 3-year planning process, as well as to provide feedback to Neil and Greg about what you all are looking for. So please be sure to take a minute or two to fill out that evaluation. And if you have any other questions, please be sure to contact TAP. Marina, I do see your question about the webinars and how to access them, and I will email you offline about exactly how to locate the webinars on the adult education website. They are all recorded, and if there are specific ones that you're looking for, I can point you in the right direction. All right, well, thank you all very much for participating, and you all have a great day.